The title of his presentation today is Horses of Przewalskij. Please, Mr. Šimek, on stage.
Hello, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be in here in this very special place of this exhibition here in Budapest. And let me give you a talk about the Przewalskij horse and about the project which is coordinated by Prague Zoo regarding the reintroduction of these unique species back to the wild in Mongolia. I'm not fully aware if everybody is very familiar with this species of the wild horse. So first, I would like to give you some short introduction. That Przewalskij horse, it is really the only one and the last of the wild horse species. Maybe that you can say, okay, there are the wild horses in the United States, Mustangs, there are the Brumbies in Australia, but all of them, they are just the feral, originally domestic horses. They are not the different species, like the Przewalskij horse is. There is a lot of differences between this wild horse and the domestic horse. I can say just one, that they have even the different number of chromosome pairs. Also, let me give you some short history. That this horse is named after Russian Colonel Nikolai Przewalskij, who received the skin and the skull of, at the time, unknown horse during one of his expeditions in the region of the current Mongolia and China. It was back in 1877, so quite late in comparison with the other species of animals, which were at that time already described. And it was a big sensation when this species was revealed as the new type of horse. And after that, many people were trying to come back to the wild and bring some alive wild horses to Europe. And it happened at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, when altogether 54 foals were imported to Europe and later distributed to different zoos and private collections in Europe and in the United States as well. And out of these 54 foals which survived that long journey from Mongolia, only 12 became later founders of all of the current stock of Przewalskij horses, which are alive today. Only 12. It was mentioned that I'm from Prague Zoo. Prague Zoo has a long history, and the long history is related also to the horses. The zoo was established in 1931. We just have a few days ago, 19th anniversary. And only 1 year after its opening for the public, the first couple of horses arrived to Prague Zoo. And since then, the breeding of the horses is undisrupted in the Prague Zoo. Already in that time, it was quite clear that these horses were never very common in the wild. And already at the end of the 1950s, the first international symposium took place. And the main and only topic of the symposium was the conservation of the last remaining wild horse. It was held in Prague. And at that time, also, the decision was taken that this species needs to have coordinating breeding program in captivity. And for this reason, the international stud book was established. And also, this stud book is held till recent days in Prague Zoo. And at that time, it was just only 10 years before the really very last wild living specimen of this wild horse was seen and recorded in Mongolia, when the last stallion was observed in southwestern Mongolia in 1969. Later on, there were no more observations in the wild of this horse. But fortunately enough, there were some horses in captivity, and they were starting to do better and better. So the conservationists and dedicated people started to think about the possibility to bring them back to Mongolia or to China. And the first ever transport back to the homeland of these wild horses happened in 1985, when the first horses arrived to the breeding station established in near Urumqi in Xinjiang province in northern China. 7 years after that, the first horses arrived also to Mongolia. At that time, it was somehow the competition. Who will be the first one who will bring the first time the horses back again to Mongolia. And 2 projects started in the same year, also in the same months. And it was just 1 day apart when the 2 planes landed in Ulaanbaatar with the horses on board, heading to 2 different projects. One in the Great Gobi Bee, strictly protected area, I will talk about it later. And the second project was established in Hustay Nur National Park, very close to the Mongolian capital of Ulaanbaatar. That project was established by Bauman's Foundation, Dutch foundation. And later on, in 2004, the third, the last but not least project was established in Western Mongolia in the region called Chomintal. And it's running, and it was established by French association TACH. By the way, TACH or Tachi is the Mongolian word for this wild horse. Here you are not very familiar with the Mongolian local names, just to show where are the particular places with the horses. Also, we can see that red dot in China, which is now the only free living population in China in Kalamaili Nature Reserve. I do not have the pointer in here, but you can see that Great Gobi Bee area at the border with the China, Hustay Nuru on the right-hand side of the map, near the capital of Ulaanbaatar, and Chomintal, the last of the projects. I promised a few words with the Great Gobi Bee area, because it is the area where we're heading our conservation activities from the Prague Zoo. This project was also established by private foundation. It was established by this guy, Christian Oswald, was the German businessman. He founded the foundation, and they started with the project in here. Later on, in 1999, until now, it's also supervised, and with the help for the daily operation of this park, it is the International Tachi Group, Swiss-based organization, who is in charge of this project, of course, together with the Mongolian conservation authorities. It is at this place, the horses, after some initial unsuccesses, because it was something new, nobody was aware if the horses should be better older or younger for their reintroduction. They were naive to some local illnesses. Only later on it was found out that they had to be vaccinated against some diseases. But after some years, the numbers just started to rise up. And it was the truth only after this very special winter, the first months of 2010, when something came which is locally known as Dud. Dud is a very severe winter with a very low temperature and also with very high snow cover. It caused at that time the population crash almost by 2/3 of the current population of the wild horses. But not only that, also millions of domestic livestock died, so it was really also the human disaster this winter. And it was this population crash which was the impulse for the decision to launch our own reintroduction project, led by Prague Zoo. And at that time, it was also for the first time when some zoological garden took the leadership in the reintroduction project of the wild horses. Here on the picture is the director of the Prague Zoo, Mr. Jaroslav Bobek, who originally came with the idea to rethink again the possibility to bring the horses to Mongolia again, because at that time there were no more imports from anywhere else to this region. So this project was running together with the International Tachi Group, the Great Gobi Bee strictly protected area. It received the label, the brand from World Association of Zoos Aquarium, and of course in coordination from EASA, European Association of Zoological Gardens and Aquariums. Usually it's supposed to be the last slide, but I put it in here that a lot of other financial supporters, the various zoos and institutions, governmental institutions, Commercial Bank, MasterCard, Minister of Environment of Czech Republic, and many others supported this project. But our permanent and ultimate partner, the most important one, quite surprising, I guess, was the Czech Army. Czech Army who provided us with this Czech military airplane, Kasa C295M, which has the carrying capacity of 4 horses, but which was more important that we were able to use it only for the running costs. We didn't have to pay anything extra. Just for the comparison, it was something like the 10 times different, the cost in comparison to some ordinary cargo companies or some cargo flights. So it was really the great support. So when the decision was taken that we will start again bringing the horses to Mongolia, there were some criteria how to select the horses from the current captive breeding stock in Europe. There were several, of course. We decided to bring just the mares. At the time, it was already known that younger the better. Of course, taken into account the genetic issues, non-pregnancy status, because you do not want to bring there the pregnant and to risk the pregnant mares on board of this very long flight. And these horses, during the course of the years, they were basically gathered from various places from Europe. You can see on the map that it's not the matter just only from one place. You can bring more and more horses because you need some variety, of course. You don't want to bring there just the sisters and brothers. And a lot of zoos and other breeding facilities provided the horses. And by the way, also from here, from Hungary, from Hortobágy National Park, there were several horses brought within this project to Mongolia. The gathering place for all of those horses, it was not the Prague Zoo, but our facility, which is not far from Prague. It is in the region called Czech Siberia, and it's not called for nothing, because it is a region which is on average colder than some other regions in central part of our country, and where we have some large facility for Przewalskij horses and other animals as well. Just before the export, the transport, of course, all the horses has to undergo some prescribed veterinary tests regarding the blood test. The bacteriological tests are done. As the mares, they have to undergo some vaginal swab investigation for some illnesses, parasites. They are vaccinated. Every single horse has to be freeze-branded for some individual recognition later on. And also, during these preparatory times, we can adjust or we can see the response of individual horses to the stress and anesthesia because, yes, the transport of the horses is stressful. So when the day D comes, the horses are again anesthetized, another set of blood samples is taken, and the horses are then pushed to the crates once they are standing up. It is the methodology which is which we have a very good experience with that, and it works very well. We have special air freight crates for the transport, which also, of course, originating in the experiences from our predecessors in 1990s, when the first imports horses came to Mongolia. But there were, of course, some improvements. It's important to have this very special head constraint in the head area of the crate, just to avoid that the horse, if it's not fit exactly the size of the horse, it can turn around in the crate, or it can make even the backflip in the horse, in the crate, and it would mean basically the end of the horse. It's something which nobody wants, of course. So here just the look from the loading time to the crate. There are a lot of openings in the crate and checking windows so that the veterinarian can check any part of the horse during the flight or to give some drugs if necessary or whatever. And it's important also not to forget who is in which crate, so we put also the labels there with the names. Yeah, so another picture from the loading. Yeah, for PR purposes, we also every year of this project were selecting the different logotype for the particular year, different color, and all of those horse guys are, as you can see, unified with one type of shirts. So the next stage is to go to the airport, which is basically around 2 hours from the place of loading. We used to ask the traffic police to assist us to avoid any traffic jams. And once we arrived to the airport, only in here we have to put this special clean basing under the crate to prevent leaking of urine to the plane, because it's quite obvious that if there is something which army guys really don't like, it is the urine spread all over the bottom of the plane. So just push it to the plane, and we can just start. I already mentioned that there can be just only 4 horses on board, and the journey is quite long. This military plane, we had to have 2 stopovers in Russia, in Kazan, in Novosibirsk, which is also quite tricky because once you land in Kazan and carry on to Novosibirsk, you are regarded as a domestic flight. So with all of those custom procedures, so it was all the time a little bit a nightmare to assure that everything will be smooth and that there will be no delays on the way. And we go all the way to Bulgan in Western Mongolia. On board, the horses are joined by a veterinarian and head keeper, and they are given the food and water. Some of them, they like it to receive some food on the way, some less. But usually it's a very good method how to calm them a little bit during this transport. The plane is air conditioned, of course, to prevent the overheating, so everybody's freezing there. And the horses are also given the long-acting neuroleptics, which also helps them keep down during several days from the beginning of the transport. Sometimes the people are asking, are those horses under anesthesia? Are they sleeping all the way? It's not true, of course. You cannot transport any animal under anesthesia, so they are fully aware, just only slightly calmed by these special drugs, which we call long-acting neuroleptics. So finally, after many hours on board, the plane can land in Bulgan, which is the domestic airport. So also a very important issue is to get the very special permit from the Mongolian Civil Aviation Authority to use this domestic airport for international flight. And this airstrip is basically unpaved, so sometimes it's quite spectacular, the landing of such a big plane or on this small airport. Also because the weather is unpredictable, like we had in one year in 2018, the flash flood running across the runway just a few days before the arrival of the plane. We all the time were trying to keep the backup airport prepared for some emergency landing, which has a good navigation devices. It has the concrete runway, but the only disadvantage is that it's much far away from the final destination. So it could be another half a day or even more for the horses to stay in the crates. So unloading in Mongolia, it is already the easier part. Everybody has to help the Mongolian guys, the Czech guys, their army loadmasters to take away from the plane the crate to the deck of the car. Because they are fixed by the ribbons, it's a good opportunity for some exercise with the ribbons. And also because, the Mongolia, of course, is a very hot environment, and usually the landing is there in the middle of the day, so we have to do something to prevent the overheating of the horses in the crate. So we put the wet felts on the top of the crate. The water is pouring over this felt, and through evaporation it helps cooling the environment a little bit in the crate. So then the road transport, sometimes it can be quite tricky. Like the first year when the horses were not taken to the Great Gobi area, but to the third reintroduction site in Chomintal. Basically, there were no roads and also obviously no bridges, but I can say that nothing happened to the horses, nothing happened to the car, nothing happened to the driver at that time. And from 2012, all the other transport, they headed to Great Gobi area, and usually it was much smoother with great part of the road, just a nice tarmac road. Altogether between the airport and the final destination, nearly 200 kilometers, 5 to 6 hours of drive. But in spite of that, all the time you have to have somebody in the field to check the road if something unexpected cannot be facing you already with the horses in the crates, like this flooded river also in that year 2018. So once we are on the trucks, everything I already mentioned, it's get much smoother. Usually it can take just only 1 or 2 hours from the landing to the time when we leave with this convoy the airport and when we are on the way to the final destination. On the way, we make also the regular stops to check the horses if they are doing okay. We can feed them, we can water the horses. I already mentioned that it helps to keep them calm, and some of the horses really like to drink during the transport. And just carry on. And where is that final destination? It is near the headquarters of this strictly protected area of Great Gobi Bee, the Great Gobi Bee area. It's called Tachintal. And there is a small river of beach, which basically the water source for the horses, which are placed to one of these acclimatization pens. The horses are usually released to the smallest one there to be under control for the first 1 or a few days. And after that, they can be released for the great enclosure, large enclosure. You can see over 160 hectares of size. So unloading from the trucks, and one after another releasing finally from the crates, either usually around the sunset, or we have a good experience also with the releasing the horses in the night. Yeah. It's interesting to observe that sometimes the horses are running quite fast away from the crates. Sometimes, they are more or less reluctant to go out. Some of them are going back to have a look, to check the situation. So obviously, still those long-acting neuroleptics are still working well. So within these acclimatization enclosures, the horses are staying not only the first days and first weeks, but also they spend there the first winter, just to get used to the local environment, to the new conditions. And the next year, early in the spring, they are also vaccinated against the disease, tick-borne disease, babesiosis, which is known from the past that it really enhances their chances for survival. And only after that, if everything's going fine, they can be released really to the wild. So now what are the up-to-date results from this project? Within this Return of the Wild Horses project, we already imported 30 mares from Europe to this place in the Great Gobi Bee area. The last transport was in 2019. It was planned some other ones, but there was no way to do that from obvious reason because of the COVID. Everybody's affected and the horses are affected as well. And because of the situation there and the population development, so we decided that there will be already no more imports planned from IADA, from EEP. EEP is the shortcut for the European breeding program for the Przewalskij horse. And what is very good that out of these 30 mares imported there from 2012, 25 are living, so there were some losses, but not directly after the transport, but from some natural reasons. It can happen all the time. And out of these 21 mares, at least once got pregnant. Another 6 probably got pregnant. That means that they were observed with the big bellies, but it's a huge area, so it's difficult to check the horses on a daily basis, so the local rangers cannot say exactly if the particular mare really foaled and something happened with the foal, or it was just a misjudgment of the gravidity. But it's a good sign that they can get quite fast to the reproduction mood with the local stallion and start to reproduce themselves. So currently there are almost 40 living offspring from 16 of these imported mares. Already the foals are there in the second generation. So the imported mares are already the grandmothers, which is absolutely great. And here you can see what's going on now. There is that population crash in 2010. And also thanks to these imports and new arrivals and the new offspring being born from these new arrivals, the population is going steadily up. And hopefully there will be no more zoot, at least no in the recent years, and the population will do better and better. So currently, at the end of this August, there were 352 horses living in this huge and lovely area, with 60 new foals from this season. You know that the horses, like the domestic ones, if they have the opportunity, they like to live in harems, one stallion and several adult mares. So currently there are already 25 different harems. On average, with just only 5 adult mares in the group, but they can be the quite variety of the sizes of this harem. There are the stallions with just only 1 mare, the young unexperienced ones, or the most prolific ones, altogether with 10 adult mares, so such groups are already quite big ones. And like elsewhere within the mammal species, usually there is a birth-sex ratio 1:1, 50-50. So with this harem social structure, you will have all the time some surplus males. So the same is true in Mongolia, that there are some bachelor groups, we call it bachelor groups, multi-males groups without the males, just waiting for the opportunity to catch some mares and to start to live in the harem as well. Here is the comparison with the other 2 projects in Mongolia. You can see the figures that the most numerous population now is Husaynur National Park, 382 horses. But at this place, more or less, it reached the carrying capacity of the area. This national park is something like a green island within the pasture land, so there is no place for the further expansion. And the youngest of the project, they have currently 121 horses, but till now, it's all the area there, it's fenced. So we can call it semi-free population. But in Gobi, in Jungaren Gobi and in Husaynuru, the horses are running freely without any fences. I'm going slowly to the end to say that the story is not only about Czechs, about the horses, about the animals, but of course also about the people who are taking care about them, because it's tightly related. So within our project, we are also focusing to the support to the local rangers, to the local administration of the Great Gobi Bee by providing the cars, motorbikes, the snowmobile for the winter seasons. A lot of other activities, like with the help from the Czech Republic, from Prague Zoo and Czech Development Agency, some ranger posts were established. We are trying to keep some emergency hay storage. If some really very bad winter comes again, it's better to provide some supplementary food for the horses than just to leave them alone and just only to count the dead bodies. We provided the equipment for the monitoring of the horses, because I mentioned that the area is huge, but there is a regular scheduled program of monitoring that they are trying, the rangers count how many horses, how many harems, in which part of the park are they roaming, etc., etc. Another kind of support was the providing of this drill of the well with the drinkable water. Also, we directed our help to the local communities, not only for the rangers and their families, but for the other people living around the park as well. So some years ago, the local hospital was reconstructed. And it's also about the political lobbying, because here you can see on the map that pink area, it is the size of the Great Gobi Bee strictly protected area like it was before 2019. But for many years, it was under discussion that it would be great this area to expand, not only for the horses, but also for some other protected and endangered species as well, to give them more space, to have there the space for further expansion. And it finally happened in 2019 when the Mongolian government decided and agreed the proposal for the enlargement of this protected area, when basically the size was doubled, which was great, and thanks to that for everybody who helped with this not easy lobbying. So, and finally the end. So I hope that you like this story. In this case, so far, successful story of the reintroduction. And what could be as a take-home message? That the reintroduction of this endangered species, or like in this case, of the species which was once eliminated completely from the wild, it's a really very long-term process. Absolutely with no guarantee of the success, with many, many challenges, where you need a lot of dedicated and highly motivated people. But all in all, undoubtedly, no doubt about it, it's worthwhile the effort, because only if you go through all of these, you can get such a nice pictures of the wild horses roaming freely in their homelands in Mongolia, and you can feel some kind of the happiness and the satisfaction that the work you are doing hopefully well, and that it has some hopefully pink future. So thank you very much for your attention, and if you would have any questions, I'm sure they will be in here, and we can have some talk about the wild horses. Thank you.